Hello, this is the Truth Seeker 333 in the continuing series on the complete review of the title L in Strong's Concordance, number H410 in Strong's Concordance. And we are starting with Job chapter 5, verse 8, which reads, I would seek unto God, and unto God I would commit my cause. The reference is LL. And you can see that they're using a different vowel sound on the first L, indicated by these three dots underneath the aleph. This is a sagol, and the vowel sound that it gives is eh, and so we are getting the L sound. And then, of course, then we have the title L, noted by the tzure, the two dots underneath the aleph. And it means unto God. So we're seeing something that looks like the same word with a hyphen in between it. L. Okay. And again, it means unto God. The other God words in this verse is, we see the word Elohim. And my note here is to note the use of Elohim in the same verse. And in this case, they're using it in the phrase El ve'el Elohim. Okay, let me just pull it up in the interlinear so we can see the exact usage. It says, I would seek unto God, and unto God I would commit my cause. And down here in the Hebrew, let me just highlight that. El, and then ve'el Elohim. Okay? Note the similar structure between El and El Elohim. Both of them are using unto. The vav here is indicating and, is what we see, and unto God. I would seek unto God, and unto God I would commit my cause. But the word for God that we're using in each case is not the same Hebrew word. The first usage is of the title El. The second usage is of the title Elohim. Okay. What this is essentially doing is drawing a parallel between the two and showing that these are synonymous with each other. So El is synonymous with Elohim. Okay. So just to show you in the Hebrew so you can get a sense of what it looks like, because in the English we have no indication because we're simply translating both words as God when it actually says El ve'el Elohim. Okay, it's like a magnification. First you're designating God in the generic sense with the title El, which is a generic title for God. El, unto God. And unto Elohim, which is more specific. So it's narrowing the view. It's narrowing the focus. Unto God and unto Elohim. In other words, that Elohim being more of an elevated term for the Lord, also indicating his almighty power, his creative power, because this is the first word in Genesis which is used for God, that Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And so let's move on to the next verse. Job chapter 8, verse 3. Doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert justice? And the usage here is ha'el. And now this is curious because we're getting a question in the Hebrew. Doth God pervert judgment? Sort of a question which is making known the fact that no, God does not pervert judgment. It's asking an obvious question. Does God pervert justice? No, God does not pervert judgment. This is a characteristic of Hebrew in that they ask obvious questions. Stuff like, is God unfair? No, God is not unfair. Does God pervert judgment? Or doth the Almighty pervert justice? See, second question. So the other God word in this verse is Shaddai, which we're translating as Almighty. Now note the use of ha'el here. In the King James Version, they insert the word doth. And I have also indicated that, in italics, that the word doth is not literally there in the Hebrew. But as I indicated before, when we're trying to convey the idea of ha'el, and in this case, it would seem that the ha, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but those of you who have a little more Hebrew under your belt, I believe that the ha indicates a question at times. So in that case, the understanding is better conveyed in English by inserting the word doth or does in the modern English. Does God pervert judgment? And again, my comment is basically that with the usage of Shaddai in the same verse, that is a reference to ha'el. It is drawing a parallel between the two words or titles of ha'el and Shaddai and making them synonymous with one another. In other words, Hebrew parallelism. Let's look at it in the interlinear. And here we have ha'el. And then we see va'im Shaddai. Okay. Which va is and, im is with. So we get the idea of and with Shaddai. But in the English, in the King James Version, they're saying or doth the Almighty. And in the Hebrew, we have no question marks. So we understand by the context that the question is an absurd question, or it's an absurd statement. It's just basically saying um, God perverts justice or judgment. It's like a statement in English here. Ha'el Yahavet Mishpat, judgment. So God, he perverts justice. So the way that we know it's a question is that we know the character of God and we know that he does not pervert justice. So it's like the classic Jewish sarcasm, does God pervert justice? Is the best way we could convey it in English. And so that's how you know you're dealing with a question in the Hebrew, because you have to understand the character of God. You have to understand the nature of God in order to see the absurdity of the statement. Okay? And then we see V'im Shaddai, Ye'avet, Zadok, justice, Mishpat, judgment. So those two words, Mishpat and Zadek, two different words, but conveying the same idea. So we see that, again, the Hebrew parallelism. You have one phrase here, which is three words. Ha'el, Ye'avet, Mishpat. Okay? And then we have V'im Shaddai, Ya'avut, Zedek. Okay? So that is the second half of the statement. Those two being synonymous with each other. So who is Ha'el? Shaddai. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next. Job 8, verse 5. If thou wouldst seek unto God betimes, and make thy supplication to the Almighty. And again the phrase, El, unto God. El. And then also the word Shaddai. We see the word Shaddai throughout the book of Job quite often. I think we see the word Shaddai more in the book of Job than any other book. And then we see my comment is the El Shaddai. We see that same usage that I just showed you. So El in this verse is in reference to Shaddai. And Job chapter 8 verse 13. So are the paths of all that forget God, and the hypocrite's hope shall perish. In the Hebrew, all that forget God, Chol Shocheh El. And there's what it looks like. Chol Shochei El. Translated, all that forget God. My note is, note the use of Shaddai in Job 8, verse 3 and 5, and also Eloah in Job chapter 3, verse 4, chapter 4, verse 9, and 17, chapter 5, verse 17, chapter 6, verse 4, 8, and 9. Also note the use of Yud-He, Vav-He throughout Job chapter 2. Also the term sons of God in Job chapter 2, verse 1, which in the Hebrew reads, B'nai ha-Elohim. Okay, so what am I saying here? Let's see if I can recall. Let's pull up the interlinear. So we're going to look in, first we're going to look in Job 8, verse 3 and 5. Doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert judgment? We just got through looking at this. And my note was, so the use of Shaddai, and then we look in Job chapter 3, verse 4. So let's skip back to that. Job 3, 4. Which reads, Let that day be darkness, let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it. So in this case, the word for God is not El, but it is, let's see here, Eloah, and there it is right there. Aleph, Lamed, Cholam, that's this character right here with the dot above it, the Vav with the dot above it, and then He. So Eloah. So this is a very interesting God word. Because we see a similarity between Eloah and Elohim. In other words, Elohim seems to be adding a plural with the im to Eloah. But what we've found is that the plural is denoting an elevation of the Eloah. Creating almost sort of a majesty, or giving the title Elohim unto a God that is above all others. But the title Eloah is also referring to a generic term of God, which could be seen as below Elohim, but that's if you're referencing a pagan deity. So again, we could see that with the title El, that El can be referred to as either in reference to the God, Ha'el, or just El, or it can also be in reference to a pagan god, a lowercase god, G. And the same goes with the title Eloah. Except when you refer to Elohim, in I would say 90% of the cases, I'm just throwing out an idea of a percentage, that it's in reference to the God of creation. And we can tell by the context of the verse if it is in reference to pagan deities, or a plurality of pagan deities. Okay, and then what I'm doing is I'm tying all of these God terms together. Where I'm showing that there is a variety. There's Shaddai. There's Eloah. So let's take a look at chapter 4, Job 4, verse 9. And it says, by the blast of God they perish, and by the breath of his nostrils they are consumed. Here we see the term Eloah again. Eloah. Okay. Let's look at verse 17 of chapter 4. Shall mortal man be more just than God? Shall a man be more pure than his maker? Again, we're seeing the question mark in the English, but we know that in the Hebrew there is no question mark. But we do see the definite article ha, which, remember I said that I'm pretty sure that designates a question most times, so correct me if I'm wrong. But in this case, it is saying ha, anish, enosh, ha, enosh. And then the second word is me'eloah, me'eloah, okay? And the Eloah part of that word is reference to God. And the meh prefix, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that means to or by God. In this case, they're just saying then God. And we see this next word is ye zedek, okay, his justice. So this is sort of, literally translated as ha, the mortal man, then God, his justice. It's a very difficult literal English translation. But the question is again absurd. In other words, to say that man is more just than God is obviously a sarcastic statement. So in the English, we put it as a question. And then we see the parallel statement on the second part of the phrase, basically reiterating or clarifying. And that's one thing about Hebrew, is that they're clarifying the question through other words to make it crystal clear that it is an absurdity of a statement, shall a man be more pure than his maker? Okay. So again, we see this term Eloah, okay? And then we'll go to chapter 5, verse 17, Job 5:17. And we say here, behold, happy is the man whom God correcteth, therefore despise not the chastening of the Almighty. Okay, there we have the word right there again. Eloah. Okay? So there is a reason that we're using different titles for God. And as we go through them, we begin to understand a little bit more regarding the flavor or the tone or the repetition or the rhyming of the phrase. It could have a lot to do with that, or it could have to do with meter. Regarding syllables, like the counting of syllables. L is like one syllable, whereas Eloah, I guess you could say Eloah, that's like 3 syllables. And, so there's different reasons for using the different titles of God. But in the English, we don't see that. Again, I'm saying, we see the word God in English, and we either assume that the word is Elohim or El, but that's not it in all cases. In some cases, it's Eloah or Elohei, So let's take a look at chapter 6, Job 6:4. And we see, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me, the poison whereof drinketh up my spirit. The terrors of God do set themselves in array against me. And again, the word for God in this verse is Eloah. Okay? Now let's take a look at verse 8 of chapter 6. And again, we see the word Eloah. Okay? And then, let's skip back to chapter 6, verse 4, because what we see is a parallelism between the word Shaddai and the title Eloah. Okay, so in the first part of the phrase, we see, for the arrows of the Almighty are within me. And then we see the terrors of God, okay, Eloah. So those two words are being put in a synonymous position to each other. Okay, just in the same way that the title El and the title Shaddai are put in a synonymous position with each other, so is the title Shaddai and Eloah put in a synonymous position with each other. It's kind of like if A equals B and C equals B, then A equals C. That kind of, mathematical logic. But if both words are synonymous with the title Shaddai, then they are also synonymous with each other. So El and Eloah are also synonymous with each other. So that's sort of what I'm trying to get at here, is that also I'm noting that the Eloah, the title Eloah includes the Vav, the Holam, and I find that very significant because I believe that that's a connecting character, and I'm trying to figure out the exact meaning of that, and if anybody has ideas, let me know in the comments. So let's take a look at verse 9 real quick. Did I look at verse 8 already? Oh, that I might have my request, and that God would grant me the thing that I long for. Okay, so it uses the title Eloah, and then we look at verse 9. even that it would please God to destroy me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. And we see that the God title here is also Eloah. Okay. Now, throughout the second chapter of Job, also note the use of the title Yud-He-Vav-He. Okay. So remember, whenever we see the English of the capital Lord, we know that it's in reference to the Tetragrammaton. So throughout the entire chapter of Job, chapter 2, we see Yud-He-Vav-He. Okay. And I don't know, just offhand, I mean, we could just count here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so you get the idea. And then here we have another God word that is set in parallelism with Yud-He-Vav-He. In chapter 2, verse 3 of Job, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job? There is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God. Okay, so there we see Yud-He-Vav-He. And now let's look for the word here that is being put in parallelism, which is Elohim. Okay, so we see the title Elohim in the book of Job being set in a synonymous position as Yud-He-Vav-He. Okay, all right, now let's see what else I say. Okay, yeah. And then also the term sons of God in Job chapter 2, verse 1. Let's go back here. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. Okay. So here we see B'nai, sons of Ha-Elohim. B'nai Ha-Elohim. Okay. All right. I'm just giving you a flavor of how all of these terms are being used together. You know, when we translate sons of God, okay, now let's move on to Job chapter 8, verse 20. And it says, behold, God will not cast away a perfect man, neither will he help the evildoers. Okay? And the phrase is hin el, which is translated, behold God. And let me take a look at our time here. Oh, we are 4 minutes over our 30-minute limit. So let's finish this one up. So basically this is Chen El. So behold God. It's pretty straightforward. So we're gonna end it right here at Job chapter 8, verse 20. And God bless everyone. Keep seeking truth. And I look forward to my next video.